Friends, we're coming to you today from the highest tower at Garrett-Evangelical Theological Seminary, where nobody's been for years and they would not approve of our being. And we're here with our dear friends, Reverend Dr. Julie Todd and her lipstick lesbian friend, John Wesley.
Hello, friends. We're just one day after the Connectional Table meeting here in Chicago, where I'm sure those of you who are watching this know that we had a panel discussion on human sexuality. And we're just here to talk about the outcome of that in terms of the motion that was made at the Connectional Table and sort of how that got started and, interpret that a little bit for everyone and why we think it matters or may not matter. So what happened, you can watch the panel discussion still, they archived it, the live stream, and so we're not going to comment on the content of that too much. But after it was over, I personally was completely outraged by, the process of it as much as anything, even though there might have been some good things said, particularly by Reverend Dr. Pamela Lightsey. But ostensibly this is supposed to be a dialogue and a conversation that was going to move our denomination forward through our leadership of the Connectional Table. And really, there was virtually no conversation or dialogue. There was nothing that was moving the church anywhere, except that they had talked about there being another dialogue in November. So, they gave an opportunity for people to respond. After the whole thing was over and the public was no longer watching, Bishop Hope Morgan Ward made a small report and suggested that we would, that there would be an opportunity for people to say a little bit of something. And given that opportunity, there was really silence. Nobody on the Connectional Table had anything to say. And Amy DeLong said, one question, and, again, with a paucity of response, I decided to raise my hand and say how outraged I was, and that, if this is a conversation that's going to move things forward, where was the leadership? Where was anybody on the Connectional Table saying that the Book of Discipline was wrong and that we should abolish the language and the prohibitions against gay people in the Book of Discipline? And I said, I want to hear conversation, I want to hear action, and I want to hear it now. And the next thing I know, Bishop Minerva Carcano got up and made a motion to abolish all of the discriminatory language towards LGBTQ people in the Book of Discipline. And the motion that we, sort of ended up with was a direct result of her original motion. And so it's a little bit confusing, perhaps, sort of how we should feel about that. And so both Amy and Sue are going to talk a little bit more about that.
I want to hear from John Wesley first.
John, what do you think about how you were portrayed yesterday?
Yeah.
John says no comment.
We're stunned to silence, too.
All right. Let's hear from Sue Laurie.
We're only silent for a moment. And when the moment came, first I'd say for so many years, for how long, and again at the Connectional Table, people are coming up to us and saying, you have more friends in the room than you realize. And I kept trying to say, if they were my friends, I would know who they are. And we hear this on and on, but they can't raise their hand. They can't do the leadership Julie mentioned. So when Minerva put her hand up and came to the microphone, she had said a few other things that were helpful earlier, and I thought, well, I wonder what this is going to be. And when she asked for the complete removal of all the discriminatory language in the Book of Discipline, I was stunned. I try not to ever be surprised, but that was very surprising. But immediately, 10 to 12 people seconded it with a lot of energy, and that was then I could be surprised. There was a lot of energy, there was a lot of enthusiasm. It was as if people finally saw one another and could possibly do the right thing. As leaders being called out, I believe there was a potential for that motion to pass later on. What we got was some of the delay tactics. The status quo for me is so powerful, the people who are against us usually don't have to say a word. This flushed out some of that. They panicked, they put in the delays, and then my energy and my air just went out of me. I guess I'm still a little surprised that they came back. They hung in there. They voted out one of the delay tactics and came back to something that might be helpful.
Yeah.
DeLong.
Yeah.
Still silent.
I'm still stunned to silence. I just think I can't say enough about what Bishop Carcano did. So often we get so frustrated that our friends just are silent and have abdicated all of their moral authority. And in a second, Bishop Carcano was able to really capture the moment and work by the movement of the Holy Spirit and say this stuff needs to come out of the book of discipline. The delay tactics were predictable but hurtful, and as people were saying, we need to bring this to every annual, we can't make a decision without the input of every annual conference. Well, the Connectional Table makes decisions without the input of annual conferences all the time. But they kept, and I kept thinking, we've brought this discussion to the annual conferences for years, decades, and that it just hasn't been dealt with well. So we know that was just a delay tactic. It wasn't meant to really educate people. And there was just a lot of conversation around, this is too fast. We've done this too quickly. We're making decisions before everybody's on board. And that was the moment I just found myself feeling really hopeless. And once again, it was Bishop Carcano who stood up and said, there have been people who have waited 42 years. This conversation isn't new. We've had it over and over. And can we please offer something to the people who are being hurt and left out and left behind and beaten up by the policies of our church? Can we offer them something? And that was the only time in all of that, what sometimes was horrible, it was the only time I just was moved to tears because finally an ally said something that was real balm for me. And I say thank you to Bishop Carcano, and I hope that other leaders in the church, whether it's clergy, bishops, lay people, can live by her example, muster their moral